Hi, this is Pete Gooding from Ibiza, musical director at Hostel La Torre, and you are listening to the Liverpool Connection Podcast.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Liverpool Connection Podcast. I am your host, Daz, or Darren, whatever you want to call me, as long as it's not a horrible, nasty name. But this is my football and music episode where I bring on a musician, DJ, producer to talk about football and their love for music as well. And I cannot wait to introduce you because he's a really good mate of mine. It's, good God, it's 20 plus years. It's got to be more than that now. That we've
well, I'm trying to think of the very first time we met. It must have been at that party in New Orleans.
Don't make noise.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, the fact that we can still remember that probably means a lot.
Yeah, I don't remember like much about that night apart from that.
I can remember quite a bit, strangely enough. I remember drinking cocktails out of plastic cups in the green room at the venue, which was actually a church.
Riverboat Hallelujah in New Orleans. And, we watched the sunrise in a hot tub.
We sure did. Yeah.
Not just me and Pete. there were other people there, but I want to introduce you. You know, it's Pete Bones, DJ, producer extraordinaire, world globe-trotting traveller. Now he's based out of Brighton, owner of Red Ant, and used to have Ugly Bug. So all you late 80s, early 90s aficionados would know both labels, but now he just does Red Ant, and I'm thrilled to have you on, Pete. And I know you were on last year when we did the Spurs Liverpool preview. He's a Spurs fan, so you know there's a lot of good banter that goes between us all the time. But let's talk music first for you, mate. I mean, you've been in this scene for a long time, and it's still a scene. You know, obviously, Clubland is a lot different from, you know, when we all started going to clubs. You know, a lot of clubs closing now. Watergate, I just heard, is about to close. New Year's Eve is their last.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so they've 22 years. So that's just mental. But I want to know more about. I mean, I can't even. You know, I don't think we've ever really sat down together and talked about, you know, your musical roots. I mean, I know you were into punk and some ska, but like when you know, what was playing in your house, like early doors?
Well, when I was a little mini band, a little nipper. It wasn't a particularly musical house, I have to say. And I can give you an indication or an example of that with how I actually named my first record label, and it was named after a song called "The Ugly Bug Ball" by Burl Ives, and that was a record that was on heavy rotation in the Bones household, and it was essentially like a novelty record party, and that's what I remember. That's possibly one of two records that I remember being on our family turntable, and that's where I got the name from. So I was given a sort of blank slate really when it came to music and football, because my dad wasn't into football at all. So I had sort of carte blanche to develop my own preferences. So I'd say I didn't really start. Well, I mean, I was pretty young, I suppose. About 9 or 10 is when I first started really getting into music and buying 7-inch singles. and the ones I really remember were the punk stuff like the Stranglers, UK Subs, and the Scar, the Specials, and then Madness shortly afterwards. Because back then, pop culture was, it was a thing. People had an opportunity or choices to be 5 or 6 different things, all within the same, within the same time frame. So you'd have, maybe let's say 1980, you could have skinheads, you could have rude boys, you could have mods, you could have punks, you could have Teds, you have rockabillys, you have rockers. I'm probably missing one or two, and without sounding like a sort of those days were better than they are now, I don't think you really get that now. Not with the ubiquitous nature of the internet. You can't have an underground fad or piece of pop culture musically, because it's just out in the open within a day or two, 3 days, I don't know, TikTok, all those kind of things. So we had a chance to be a bit more underground for a bit longer, I suppose. That's what I'm saying.
Like for me, I mean, like my sister's like a year older, so I would kind of get the hand-me-down 7-inch singles, and a lot of it was like the new wave stuff. Obviously, Depeche Mode, Joy Division.
Right.
But I also had, me dad was Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, and my mum was Elvis, the Beatles. So I kind of had a mishmash as well, and for me,
there's still, there's a lot of pedigree in both coming from both sides. I was getting Tijuana Brass and Great Wolf movie themes from my dad's side, and my poor mum, I don't really think, I mean, and okay, yeah, they're like the Beverly Sisters and like wartime favorites, sort of that sort of stuck in a moment in time, and missing some really good stuff in the 60s and 70s, I'd say. Through not through any fault of, I'm talking about my mum now, not through any fault of hers. It was just, they were doing different things. They were, having kids.
So there wasn't Top of the Pops in your house?
Not until I was probably about, I'd say, 8, 9, 10 years old. I remember listening to Top of the Pops, and I think going out to buy the very first single I think I bought was Mr. Blue Sky by ELO. And if I'm not mistaken, that was probably around 77. So I would have been 9 years old. But after that, it was all happening pretty quickly. I had a hand-me-down record player, gramophone, or whatever you want to call it, that I think we still have over at my mum's house in the loft. And I'd say within a couple of years, I probably had 40 or 50 records.
Well, that's the good thing too. Is like if you had like a market near your house, which I did as well. There'd always be a record stall. So you just go there and you can get so many 7 inches for a few quid. So it was really, pretty easy back then. I loved, going to these record stalls. I wish there was more of them. I mean, I know you've done quite a few on like Record Store Day, which I think more people need to do. I reckon there's probably 1/50th of the record stores now that there were then. I mean, in our tiny little town, we were in a town called Ashford, sandwiched between Staines and Feltham.
not a salubrious area at all. And I think that we had maybe 3 record stores in Staines, 2 in Ashford, and maybe 2 or 3 in Feltham. And that's all right within a bike's ride away. And I don't think there's probably any in between those 3 places now. You don't want to sound like a Luddite in as far as standing in the way of technology, and technology has been great for the music that I make and play as a DJ and a producer. It's become ever increasingly easy to produce music, but when there was a tangible feeling to the production of music, i.e., you had to make an item that you would sell in a shop or store. I think there was just a little bit more quality control, or you were either being backed by someone who had faith in your product, or you had to have faith in it yourself. You couldn't just release something for the sake of it, which is obviously what you can do now. You can self-publish, you can self-release, and again, I'm not against that, but it means that there's probably 100 times more bad music coming out, as well as maybe 10 times as much good music. So the days of pop culture, record stores, going to the record store every Saturday when the new releases come in, whether as a 9 or 10-year-old, or as a 20-year-old DJ up in town, when there would be 5 or 6 of a white label that came in, and you'd get to hear a minute of it or 30 seconds of it, and then you'd have to decide if you wanted to pay 10 quid for that thing of your hard-earned money that you had to be slightly circumspect with, because you didn't have that much. So those were the old early days of record buying, and also record selling, making records, driving them to all the different record stores myself in my car, dropping them off, and never really knowing how many you were going to sell, because it was always sale or return. So you would just then hope that someone would be pushing it and someone would be liking it, And then I suppose the next stage from that is your first radio play, the first time you played on not a pirate radio, but the big ones. The big ones when I was starting off were Kiss and Radio 1. Radio 1 specifically Friday and Saturday nights. I think it was Pete Tong both nights, or maybe it was Pete Tong Fridays, and then Saturdays were a mixture of I can't really remember, but I remember the first time I had a track played on Kiss and the first time I had a track played on Pete Tong's show, and thinking, this is a massive step in the right direction, or as far as going from someone who was doing something as a hobby and never really knowing whether that it was going to ever be a career choice or something like that, and then thinking, okay, maybe I'm onto something,
Well, when did picking up an instrument happen for you? Because you're in a band first, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I probably around about 13. I mean, I picked up other instruments. I was actually terrible at school at recorder. I remember just pretending to play and thinking, this is just this is horrible, no fun at all.
Well, it's not a very sexy thing, is it? A recorder.
I don't know whether this was something that happened at all schools. I just presumed it was, but at our school, I feel like it was every day. But I'm surely it couldn't have been every day. But at least a couple of times a week, we were made to play recorder all together as a class and all the other classes, and I just had no, skill or proclivity towards it. It was just not something that interested me. So fast forward about 4 or 5 years, and I picked up a guitar with my mate Jim, and I was in a completely different frame of mind. I actually really enjoyed playing it. I was enjoying music a lot more. It was probably because I was enjoying music that I actually enjoyed playing music, and I found out that I was actually decent at it, and we started a band. We had a band. We practiced in my mum's caravan that was in our driveway, and I think by the time we were about 16, maybe we had a little 3-piece band, maybe 4-piece band, and if I'm not mistaken, we probably had 1 or 2 gigs towards the end of our. I think Jim was 18, I would have been 17, and that was right when Acid House came along. I think that probably would have been 87, 88, and everything was forgotten and dropped for the sake of this new found love of ours.
So what, like for the band though, like what was it like? Mostly like punk or bit of ska in there?
No, it was more. I would say it was more like funky punk or like funky rock. I don't know. Our main influences were probably Talking Heads, David Bowie, and Fela Kuti, which is sort of covers a lot of bases, but there's from when you're talking about the early 80s, Bowie's had gone quite poppy, and Talking Heads were in their prime, and I remember we were just blown away by the video for Stop Making Sense. The movie Stop Making Sense, when that came out at the cinema. I think that was probably about 82, 83, and it was on at Staines, the late night Friday night showing. And we were already a little bit into Talking Heads, but I remember going to watch that aged 15 or something, and it was absolutely nuts. I mean, everyone was dancing in the cinema. There was other stuff going on, obviously, that can't talk about on air, that made people sort of, a lot happier and a bit more dancey kind of thing. And that was our band's main goal, to be like Talking Heads. That was our thing, even to the point where I think Jim, our front man, started wearing similar glasses to David Byrne and trying to sort of, walk like him and act like him. It wouldn't sound like him, but yeah,
So Acid House basically ruined all that and just stopped your tracks. So, I mean, for me, yeah. I know the first club I went to and everything, but was it, do you stumble upon Acid House? Was it your mates going, hey, you need to go check this out? It's some new music that's being played
Well, I mean, we literally stumbled upon it because the first time I had any inkling of what the acid house movement might feel like was when we went to Ibiza in 1987, in summer '87, in a camper van. So I think there was about five of us. I don't know how we all fitted in this camper van, but we did. And when we were in Ibiza, staying in a hostel, we met some lads from Sheffield, and they were like, they were criminals. I'm pretty sure, they were likely lads, and they were criminals. I think they were going around Europe on dodgy, stolen credit cards or something, and they were like, lads, you've got to come to this club that we've lager louts kind of thing at the time, really, and you've got to come to this club called Amnesia. It's amazing, like nothing else you've ever seen in your life. And we were like, okay, sure. What should we do? If we meet like at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, then? And they were like, no. You go to bed at 8 o'clock, wake up at midnight, and then we'll go at get there at like 1 in the morning. We were like, whoa, okay, what's going on here? And then we went. I think the first night we got there, and these lads were like, okay, we're in over the wall. So because it was open air and it was a lot smaller, and we all jumped over the wall. And as we were jumping over the wall, they were catching us on the other side, the bartenders, because we were coming out behind the bar, or in a sort of like a dishwashing area, and they said, you've got to buy a drink, and you can come in. That's all you got to do. Just buy a drink from us, and you can come in. So we all bought a drink for, I think it was pesetas back then, and they let us walk out from behind the bar into the club, and that was it. Our minds were blown, because this place was full of like beautiful, smart, just people who were dressed in clothes that we had never really seen before, and the vibe was just incredible. And the next day we were all scrambling around to trying to find some new clothes, because what we were wearing didn't really match, and I remember just buying this like baggy green shirt with a zip up here and stripes down the arm, and I think that although there was probably a good year between that holiday and my first acid house party in London, which was towards the back end of '88, the mood had been set, and I knew that I didn't want to do anything other than be connected to that scene.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, because like I said, I've had quite a few guests on, the DJ producers. It's kind of the same story as well. They, once they first heard acid house, they were hooked, and that was it. They just knew that's what they wanted to do. So it's. I mean, for you, because were you intrigued by like more so the music than the DJ? Because Amnesia, that was like Alfredo times, right?
Yeah, it was Alfredo, and there were probably about 5 or 6 tracks that you would hear. I mean, let's say over the course of a 5 or 6 hour period, you were mostly hearing pop music. You'd hear, Cyndi Lauper and James Brown, Marvin Gaye, and you might hear Madness or the Specials, or Hall and Oates, or but you'd also hear some Nitze and some more industrial German dance music, and some I guess some Spanish Balearic music, some of which hasn't stood the test of time, and a little small portion of which has. Along with some cool American stuff like the Beastie Boys. I remember that was, there was a couple of Beastie Boys tracks that were really big in Amnesia. But it was just the people, the fact that it was like an open air club in Spain, and the music seemed to be a byproduct of that rather than the other way round. To me, anyway, it was like, it was so cool. The vibe was so cool. The people were so cool, and the club was so amazing that you could pretty much play anything that had some semblance of a beat and call it Balearic. And you kind of, I mean, you could say that theory is still being, thrashed out by lots of people, maybe more so in the UK. There's a lot of Balearicness still going on. Some of it is legit and warranted, and some of it's a load of bollocks, So I think it's hard to explain the feeling and the essence of the place, because we did go across to Coup, which was the other big club in Ibiza at the time. But for me, that was a bit more, I don't want to say mainstream, but more mainstream than Amnesia. Amnesia was the place that had that magic. Coup, don't get me wrong, it had the magic, but it didn't quite have the same underground feel, So yeah, I suppose for me, that was the first stage, and then we had the Magical Mystery Tours in London at the end of '88, autumn '88, I guess, and then everything seemed to come together at the beginning of '89, when Acid House really exploded in the south of England with the orbital raves, and that's when we started getting music from the States, house music from the States, stuff that had been made for a couple of years that we hadn't really necessarily been able to get our hands on, and stuff that probably was played in Amnesia, but I don't really have much recollection of it. I don't really, I don't recall, Seduction or Farley Jack Master Funk or any of those sort of tracks being played in Amnesia, but I'm sure they were, And that's when you'd get a delivery of 30 or 40 records to the London record stores. A lot of them, the same 30 or 40 records going to, 10 different stores, and the DJs would have the choice of those records, and that's it for 2 weeks or something, for a week or two. So you'd hear a lot of the same stuff at the raves, and I mean, there weren't really clubs, I suppose, as much then, but a lot of people were playing the same stuff because there just wasn't, as much choice, and that was fine.
Well, when did the DJing thing, start then? Like, because obviously, when you first get into Acid House, it's just parties after parties, late nights, so many late nights and stuff, and then, obviously everyone has heard the story of Oakenfold, Danny Rampling going to Ibiza, coming back and then trying to recreate, what they were listening to. When did you go, I wanna be a DJ?
In the beginning of '89, I'd already decided that I think the live music, rock music, or whatever it was we were doing, wasn't really exciting me. So I think it was probably very early '89 that I myself and my two mates, Adam and Alan, from our local area, I think we all chipped in about 200 quid each, and we bought two 1210s or 1200s at the time, maybe, a Gemini mixer, and a couple of speakers. And I think we got from Slough Audio, I think we managed to pick up all of that for about 600 quid. And we just put it out there that we'd play wherever. We didn't really necessarily need to get paid, but it would help. And I think from maybe, I don't know, I'm guessing about March, April '89, we would play whenever there wasn't a rave or something better to do. And, we would pretty much play indoors, outdoors. We had a friend who had a barn. We'd do that. I remember doing a little thing in a scout hall in Stanwell. We did a rugby club in Sunbury. A lot of the time, these places were just halls for hire. They didn't really have the experience of a load of people rocking up with the sound system and playing the sort of music we were playing, and the kind of people that would be going, and the kind of things that would be going on. So we might not necessarily have been able to book these places twice, but things were moving pretty fast back then. It wasn't too long before I had I probably got my first residency in 1990.
That's pretty quick, Pete, to get it. But also, it's the gift of the gab, isn't it? Blagging your way a lot of the times, going, hey, I can get the punters through the door. And, that first night, not too many, you don't have too many followers. It's just like you just got to persevere and, go to the next place and see if more people will come.
Yeah, I think that we had a little bit of a small following due to the fact we were the only people in our area doing it. I mean, there were people doing the same things in their little areas all around London, but in our little area, it was us. So that led to us having a small following, which led to a couple of club nights, or let's say pub nights even. I think we were doing a pub night on a Friday night locally. And I think I was doing a chintzy sort of club in Surrey somewhere on a Sunday night, in Camberley or something. What's it called? Tuskers, I think. And yeah, how I got my main night was by blagging it, walking into a place and saying, you need me, I'm a good DJ, this is what I will bring for you. Give me a chance on Friday nights, and I still know the guy whose pub it was, who reminds me every now and again of how cocky I was, but what happened in the end was that they had someone who just started doing a Tuesday night there, and he wasn't happy with him for one reason or another. And he said, I'm going to get rid of him. I'll give you the Tuesday night, which is not really a night that I wanted to do, but I would take anything. And I took it. And within a year or so, it was one of the biggest nights in the sort of, well, let's say the southwest of London area, or Surrey sort of area. We had 1,300 people coming in the pub.
Yeah, that's mental for a Tuesday night, and that's Hand and Spear, right?
Yeah, the Hand and Spear.
Yeah.
So anyone who's from that area, who's over the age of probably 50 will have heard of the Hand and Spear, because it was a legendary situation. It was like no other place, because people would travel for an hour or longer to get there, and get there pretty much on the dot at 8 o'clock. So they knew it would close at 11, so they could get their 3 hours of dancing in, and it was rocking from like 8:30 all the way till the end. Yeah. Yeah.
When did you go as like DJ Pete, or what was your first like DJ name?
It was always Pete Bones. I mean, my nickname would have been Bones from when I was a skinhead, where it was actually Bonehead, and thankfully it got shortened to Bones after a few years. Pete Bonehead, I don't know if that would have such a long-lasting ring to it, but Bones was my nickname. So I think from maybe, I don't know, late 80s, that was what people knew me as, Bones or Pete Bones, you know. So that was always my it was my de facto DJ name. I didn't choose it. It just happened to be what people called me. And some people still don't realise it's not my actual last name. So the mistake I made with that night is actually not giving the night a name, because as we all know now, it's all about branding, and I did that night for 5 years without giving it a name. It was just Tuesday night at the Hand and Spear. So I couldn't ever take it on the road, because it didn't have, you know, it wasn't Shum or Cream or, you know, Gate Crasher or whatever you want to call it. So that was a mistake. Never really thought about stuff like that when I was young. I just wanted to play and have a wild time. You know, that was
I think that's one of the major differences between then and now, because, like you alluded to, you know, everybody knows you've got to create a brand now to get anywhere. You know, you have to have a social media presence if you want to be booked. You know, they'll look at how many followers you have.
Yeah.
Which, you know, back in the day, it'd be a bit ridiculous. You know, it's like, how good are you behind the decks? That's what counts.
Yeah.
These days, it's more like, you know, hey, you know, how many do you have on Insta? How many do you have on Twitter? You know, Facey, or all this. Are you on social media all the time? So, you know, I mean, how difficult was it for you? Like back in the day as well, did you only just want to play, you know, around London? Did you want to go, you know, up north?
Oh no, I was quite ambitious, I think. I mean, when I first released a white label, before I'd started Ugly Bug, we put out a white label. My friend Justin Drake, well, he engineered it and I produced it. He was learning how to engineer and I was learning how to produce. I was trying to take my musical knowledge or skill into the studio, and the track that I guess I made was called Fixation. It was a white label, and I think we probably pressed 1,000 or something like that, and I drove around selling these records. So that was the next step for me to, you know, world domination or whatever you want to think. So was going around my head. But of course it wasn't anything like that. It was just, let's do this and see what happens. Let's do this. It could be fun. It sounds like a good laugh, you know. And that's what, like I said, 100 other lads were doing, or lassies were doing, in and around the south of England, because they wanted to have something, you know, with their name on it. That was good, obviously, and I don't think it was that particularly great. I don't think it was bad, but you got to start somewhere. And then I think the next track I released was when I decided to give the label a name, get some artwork done, we were learning from other people who had been doing it a year longer than us or 6 months longer than us. It didn't take much, and I think that would have been about 92, and that's, I think, the first time I heard one of my records being played on national radio, and that is a pretty crazy feeling, because I would think I was driving to a gig at the time, and I was just remember thinking, wow, I think I've made it. and 2-3 days later I get a phone call from London Records saying, do you want to do a remix for us? And then 2 weeks later I get a phone call from XL saying, do you want to do a remix for us? So, that's how quickly things were moving. And another year after that, I had, the Shaker was born, and I was making tracks that were, making me a decent amount of money. Again, they weren't mainstream or hitting the mainstream, but on the underground scene, they were like pretty big, I suppose.
Well, again, with record stores, every Monday I would go down to 3 Beat in Liverpool and get all the new releases, and spend most of the hard-earned money I'd made on the YTS scheme. So, that's
25 quid a week.
Yeah, that's like 2 tracks.
Well, you might get 5 domestics or 2 imports for that. Yeah.
Yeah, but you'd spend your hard-earned money on it, but it was just. I mean, we talk about the record shops and everything. It was a meeting, a melting pot for promoters, for DJs, for punters as well, alike. Just to be in a record shop, and I remember, I don't know which track it was. I remember seeing it at 3 Beat on Ugly Bug, and I was like, because there was different musical taste back then as well, because Liverpool had Scouse House, which was very, just out there, very like diva, piano led stuff that I wasn't really into. So I always was looking for more underground stuff, and your label popped up, and it's just crazy, how life kind of comes around, and then get to meet you, like, oh god, then it all went downhill.
Yeah, who was it? Pez and Steve at 3 Beat. I don't know. Can you remember the name?
Yeah, Pez was their general manager, and Steve Parry worked there. And it was Andy.
Andy Carroll? No.
Forgotten his last name. And I just talked to Pez as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he just did a 2-hour episode with me, and we didn't even talk about football. Yeah,
no.
I'm gonna have him back on, because he's a not. Went to uni in Nottingham, but he's a Liverpool supporter, because he spent most of his time like in Liverpool. So he's got some great stories. But yeah, I mean, for you, obviously hearing your stuff on the radio, like you said, wow, I've made it, but you're not even close. You know what I mean? Like in this build, but it helps you get gigs. Obviously when you put records out, then people associate the name on the record with the DJ,
Yeah.
And it was good back then also, because if you did have a new 12-inch out, you can give it the DJ. You can't even get barely close to these DJs. And what are you going to do? Give them a USB stick? But, you're able to actually go, oi, here, I have a track for you. Give it a listen. Or did anybody play? Like, did you ever do that? Did you hand them out at clubs to sit?
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember. I mean, specific clubs. I can't really remember like instances, but I would definitely go round to record to labels, and because you'd get labels would be associated with certain DJs, so I would give a couple of copies of white labels or something to certain labels for them to get to their people, and one of them might have been for Oakenfold, one of them might have been for Sasha, and Carl Cox. These are the sort of people you were trying to get your records into their hands. But the only time I ever really remember going and physically giving a white label to a DJ, and he took it and put it on the turntable of the one that wasn't playing, listened to it in his headphones, and looked at me, said thanks, and then played it. And that was Danny Tenaglia. And I was like, wow, this guy's cool. He doesn't give, he's like, because I wouldn't ever do that. I wouldn't have the balls to do that. I would play. That's not playing it safe. But then, what's Tenaglia known for? Playing 12 hours, 10 hours. He and he's got the ear. So fair play to him. That was probably, I don't know where that would have been, but that was probably 94 or something like that. 93.
That's a massive stamp of approval.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I think that by then I had faith in my stuff, my shakers. It was probably one of the early shaker tracks that I knew. I knew that a lot of people had put their stamp of approval on already. So it wasn't like I just thought it was a very ballsy thing to do, But of course, you had to mail. I would mail out tracks as well to all the sort of the residents of like the Gatecrasher residents and the Cream residents and all this sort of thing. It was just me at my house, little cottage industry, sending out, because I've been given the addresses from other mates, kind of thing. It was never a polished, legitimate sort of promo company or mail out sort of thing, But they always seemed to get into the right hands, and they got. I got a lot of good reviews in the magazines. DJ Mag and Mix Mag were the two main ones at the time. In fact, I got asked to do reviews for DJ, and probably did that for 2 or 3 years, from maybe about 94 to about 97, I think, if I remember right, before it started getting censored or becoming a bit more corporate, if you want to call it. And my acerbic wit wasn't quite as appreciated.
Well, when did you've started Ugly Bug, and one thing that I've always said about you, Pete, is that you don't get pigeonholed. I don't think, musically wise, like Sasha Digweed were more in the progressive house. Obviously, Oakenfold was trance. You were still like on the cusp of a little bit of that, little bit of this, weren't you?
Yeah, I think I still am. There's definitely been times when you could say I was a progressive house DJ probably in the early 90s, but then I would play a lot of techno and a lot of Belgian new beat and some German techno, some Dutch more trancey stuff, and so a lot of US house. So yeah, I've always liked to tiptoe between these things. To me, there was only ever good and bad dance music. You could probably say that about all music. So I was never about trying to have a brand again that seemed to be the way for certain people with whom I played, and and seemed to want to take it to the next level, or thought they knew how to take it to the next level, and they probably did, because we're talking about people like Digweed, Sasha Oakenfold, Paul Van Dyke, and they stuck with one sound and took it to the heights that they, that everyone knows that they did. For me, as soon as I actually did start getting pigeonholed, which was the whole hard bag, I guess you'd call it, not handbag and not hard house, in between, because the shaker was put into that category by people who love to do stuff like that, and to me that was like, hold on a second, this is starting to become a little bit too commercial for my liking. I understand why those more commercial DJs are playing that stuff. It's it's uplifting, and can be maybe a little bit cheesy in parts, but it was never my intention. It was always my intention to make underground music. And so when I did start to get lumped in with those guys, the likes of Tall Paul and Tony DeVitt, that I sort of pushed back against it, because that wasn't my intention. I didn't want to be that guy. So that's when I basically closed Ugly Bug down and started Red Ant. I went, but on a much more underground direction. And also, I think that coincided with me getting a lot more work in the States, and for me, it was like riding the same wave of underground euphoria that I'd done 5 years earlier in the UK. Like it was like a second coming sort of thing. I could be greedy and enjoy that wave again. So that's pretty much what I did. I moved within a few years. I'd moved to the States, and
it was. I mean, like, I think we've had the best of both worlds. I mean, for me, moving over to the States when I did, I was able to, see the early rave scene, because I was based out of Savannah. So, I'd drive to Gainesville, Simons, Orlando, to the Beecham and to Firestone, and then Miami. So it was like you saw like you said, the euphoria on everybody's faces again. It was just like another like summer of love, I would like to say, for us, because we'd already seen like the rise of it in the UK, and seeing it again in the States was even better. And then it took off in Florida first, and then obviously the South, Atlanta, New Orleans started to get more parties going on. It was just a really good time for music, for us, and especially for yourself. I mean, being able to play in the States is, for a lot of like musicians, making it in the US is like their goal, so to speak. But for you, it's like a new lease on life, and you more people get to hear your music, which is
I wasn't thinking about anything really at the time other than DJing and having fun. I mean, I was selfishly into a hedonistic sort of life at that point, and as much as I loved DJing, and I really enjoyed making music in the studio and playing and hearing my own tracks out, I still probably spent way too much time having fun and not concentrating on my career, because I still didn't really see it as a career. I just saw it as a means to an end, and it was, I mean, that sounds that's slightly flippant way of saying that I was, you know, having a successful time in my life, but I never really took it as seriously as I should have done. Maybe, let's say, and that's probably why I had a little bit of a sort of not burnout, but an inevitable sort of deceleration or descendancy, probably in the mid 2000s. You know, I hadn't really, you know, I didn't have a firm enough foothold to take it to be able to just cruise along without, you know, really making some or consistently making music that was as well produced, but also as well received. And probably I had a few years where, you know, I didn't really progress. I wasn't really progressing. I probably stagnated a little bit, you know. So let's say 2005 to 2010 weren't great years for me. You know, I was just sort of treading water, sort of, you know, doing the bare minimum, living a bit of a high life sort of thing, and then realizing that actually if you don't put enough hard work into these things, you can only get by on past glory for so long. And it's never something that I've ever wanted to do or tried to do, but that's kind of, I think that was maybe what was keeping me going. And then it was a sort of a bit of an awakening, like, you know, you're actually not making enough money anymore to sort of to live the way you've been accustomed to, which obviously coincided with digital music streaming, and probably for most people in my position, at least half of your income being removed within a sort of 12-month period. You know, making records, selling records, and a lot of the records that I was making and putting out weren't as great as the previous stuff, and they probably weren't as good as they could or should have been. But I was still, you know, you'd still sell records, and there were still people who were willing to buy them. And then that went, you know, I can't tell you the exact month or but I would guess it. I'm guessing it was probably around, you know, 2010, when maybe even a little bit before that, when when Beatport started, you know, when, I mean, they were the main players, weren't they? But when music went digital, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be tough when half of your income's gone down the drain, you know. And but the good thing is, you know, you still had your DJing, and you know, even back then, you know, to make a good career from DJing is still plausible as well. You know, getting decent gigs. But you know, as you get older, you know, obviously, you know, we've alluded to it, you know, off camera. You don't want to travel as much. You know, you kind of want your home base, and you want a, you know, a residency where you're based out of. You know, your Fear and Loathing has done really well, and it's done really well in the States as well. You know, Tampa, I know you do the Fear and Loathing shows there.
Yeah, that's where obviously that's where that party originated. But I mean, you know, my life is now wholly back in the UK. I mean, I think I moved back right around that time, mean, there were family health issues as well that needed to be helped out with, or just be more present for. And it was a slow transition for me to get back into the swing of things over here. And it certainly wasn't, easy or overnight. But what happened really for me was a little bit later in that decade when lockdown came along, or when COVID came along. It meant that I could write the music that I've been wanting to do for a few years, well, for many years, that was more band related. And, because everyone was in the same boat, I could ask some of these musicians who I'd wanted to work with, and some with whom I'd worked before, maybe in the distant past, if they wanted to get involved. And so I did, and I wrote 3 albums pretty much from when COVID first hit to when it was kind of given the all clear, which was probably about a 3-year window. I think I wrote 3 albums, one a year, that came out on vinyl, full LPs with a band, and they did really well, and they put me back on the map production wise, and also gave me, I think, a bit more confidence to start my own nights up. So I think I've been in Brighton now for about 2.5 years. I think I've been doing the Fear and Loathing party here for about 3, and it couldn't have gone any better, really. It's been great. I mean, it's a very talked about underground party. It's only, I think we had 250 people at the biggest one, but it's around 200 people, and now I've got 2 other nights going, and I'm super happy here. This is my home, and I feel like the music I'm making now is as good as it was. I'm taking more elements from the stuff I made, or not elements as such, but more of a feel, or a feeling that I had at the time, and mixing it with, the music I'm playing, and the vibe of the party. And the party is, I think, as good as anything that I have ever been to, whether I've been 55 or 25.
I mean, it's just great to hear that, because I can't imagine, because you have been a DJ producer for so long, that I'm sure, there's times where it does get tedious. I mean, you see all these young kids these days, and they'll see the DJ with the Rolex watch, they'll see the DJ with a private plane, and all this. They think, they're put on a pedestal. Like, DJs are the modern day rock stars now, and they don't see what DJs do actually go through, that their little entourage that they have, that they have to pay for. That there's late nights, there's lots of spending time in airports, which is just boring and crap. But from what I've known of you, over the years, even when you come visit me, you're always on your laptop, you're always working on tracks, and I think that's the beauty of technology as well, is as long as you've got your laptop and there's internet, you can make a track anywhere in the world. And I think that's brilliant. You've always been such a hard worker, from what I've known of you, and you've had 2, I would say, successful labels. Maybe not monetary wise, but like the music wise has been.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think I'm happy with the way the labels are or have been. I think that there was just a period of time where it was just a bit stagnant, like quality wise, and I didn't quite know which direction to go with it. So I was just letting it just flow a little bit. Because I've always been a bit like, if you don't really know what to do, then don't do anything too major. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. But sometimes life's like that. It's cyclical, isn't it? There have been, I've had at least three, four up down cycles where I've been, one year riding the crest of a wave, and then 3-4 years later, struggling. Not not necessarily struggling to get gigs or to get music out there, but just struggling maybe financially. The money's just not coming, and most DJs will tell you there's just there's not much money in it for people other than the ones that you were talking about who do have the private jets, and the ones who have chosen to be more mainstream and aren't necessarily in it for the love of the music. I mean, I'm not saying they don't love their music, but they're a bit more concerned about image and that side of success. The sort of more visible side of success rather than the more internal feeling of success that that you can't buy or you can't fake, sort of thing. You know when you're legit and you're being true to yourself and your roots, and when you're not. So fair play to them, but for the rest of us, it's a grind. It's you have to put the hours in. You have to put the prep work in for your gigs, and you have to find those venues and keep. I won't say keep believing. That sounds a bit naff, but yeah, just keep giving yourself a little kick in the arse every now and again.
well, and stay humble. I think that's a big thing. You've always been humble, and that one of the biggest things I can just say to you is just like every set has always been different. Every set, I'm not going to do the whole like you take me on a journey crap. But you rock a dance floor, you always have, and there's many DJs that just can't change up. They come in and they haven't really figured out the vibe, and they play what they're gonna play, and it's just not worked. I've never really seen that from you, and I just you've changed your sound with the times as well. It's not, you don't sound like Pete from 91, 92. Like you change with the times. I like how you do some of the indie dance in your sets. It just it's always different. That's one thing I can definitely say about you. But as a good segue, you were talking about success. Let's talk about Spurs. I just had to bring that. Yeah. I do have to tell you something, because when I was 11, I probably watched one of the best finals I've ever watched, which is the Man City Spurs match. The first match was really good, the FA Cup final, of course, and then the replay was even better because, again, I've been through the days where I've watched John Barnes, and what he did with the football was unreal. But then when I saw Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa, I was like, what? Like, they could do incredible things with the football. And, you know, Ricky Villa still scored one of the best goals at Wembley, you know, ever. It was voted, I believe, Wembley's goal of the century.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in 2001. Because, I mean, it was. I mean, he was 30 yards out. He beat 4 players and, you know, scored. And it, you know, it was just a really riveting game because it was back and forth for a while. But I remember getting a Spurs top because my dad used to work in the Middle East, and he was on the plane with all the Spurs lads. And he told him, like, no, me, you know, he was like, oh, you know, footballers, like, yeah, Tottenham. He's like, me son, you know, he supports Liverpool. And they were like, oh, well, we'll sign a jersey and give it to him. My dad was like, well, I just said he's a Liverpool supporter. They're like, well, you know, maybe he'll change. Yeah, it didn't happen. But I kept the shirt. I don't know where it is these days, but I had Gary Mabbott, Garth Crooks, Archibald, Ozzy.
That's pretty worth a few £100.
Yeah, I know.
Donate it to charity, mate.
Yeah, it's probably was binned a long time ago.
Give that to my mum when she does one of her charity balls over this way. I donated my one to her last time with the last time we won a cup with it was signed by all the players.
Got lots of cobwebs on that one, yeah.
Yeah.
But when did the delightable Tottenham Hotspurs like come into your life? Because, you know, obviously for me it was just for Liverpool way early, 6 years old for me. And I know
the first game I ever went to was Spurs Liverpool, actually, and that would have been in about 83. I'm going to say probably the first Spurs game I went to. I'd been to actually a Brentford game a year or two earlier. So it may have been a bit before that. I think I'd been to a Brentford game when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And whilst I enjoyed the atmosphere there, the football didn't really excite me that much. I remember thinking, but I did actually really enjoy it. It was Griffin Park or something, was it? I think the old Brentford ground. But I think the first Spurs game I went to, I was maybe 14, so it would have been about 82, and remember thinking, oh yeah, there's a buzz here, you know, this is cool. It was quite hooliganish as well, which I quite enjoyed, and you know, running around chasing after. I remember getting into a bit of a street brawl. I mean, we weren't brawling. It was just a lot of running up and down. But I mean, getting chased by some Liverpool fans, then chasing some Liverpool fans, and you know, all that sort of stuff. So I was a little bit of a young hooligan, I suppose. But that was 80.
Without actually doing anything.
Yeah, I don't.
Playing chase me, catch me.
Yeah, I don't think I ever threw a punch in anger or got punched. I don't think. And so that would have been 82, probably right at the end of Matt. I think Mabbott was still captain, and we had Stevie Archibald. I think this is pre Ginola, and right at the end of the I think Ardiles was still playing, maybe, but Ricky Villa stopped playing, or the other way around. I can't quite remember. And through the years, you know, we had the Gazza years. I think trying to remember when. I think was it the 81 FA Cup final that Gazza scored that amazing free kick?
No,
was that?
No, not 81. because that was the Ricky Villa one.
Okay, so it would have been, we're talking a lot later than that, aren't we? Gaza was maybe 88 or something like that. So yeah, and then I think Ginola was probably in between those times, in the sort of mid 80s, and then the sort of the Darren Anderton years, the sort of, I always thought he was an underrated player, but he never really he just never really did it for England, did he? I don't think. He was a great player, old Darren Anderton, sick note as I used to call him. And then the sort of the real mediocre sort of mid-table years of the sort of Chris Armstrongs and who was that defender that poor guy that he died of a brain. I think he had a brain aneurysm or something, but he wasn't. He was our captain, I think, for a little while, central defender. But again, it was just all a bit mediocre. I think in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, or maybe early 90s, mid 90s, and that's pretty much where I lost interest for a little while. Obviously, that coincided with Acid House coming along. So for me, the 90s weren't really a time when I was interested in football. I would follow the results. I would see how the team were doing, but I rarely would watch a game. A lot of the time I was on the road. A lot of the time I was in the States, and back then you couldn't see it. You couldn't watch a game. There was no internet. There was, the Premier League hadn't been picked up yet in the States at all by any network. I don't think that would probably even happened until well into the 2000s. So you've got to just write off that decade in a footballing way, for me at least. Anyway, I don't know how it was for you, whether you were still as staunch then as you were before or you are now. I'm guessing probably not quite as much. And then I suppose it picked up again for me when you could start watching the games in the States on TV, which probably was mid 2000s, and of course then we had some ups and some downs, but some really great times under people like Martin Jol, and Pochettino. That I think, was it 3 or 4 seasons with Pochettino were probably the most exciting time for a Spurs fan, probably since the 70s, I would imagine, because we were playing so well and just being unlucky not to win that elusive trophy. If it wasn't for Leicester, or just a couple of bad decisions in some cup games. I can remember one really dodgy penalty decision against a certain team in a Champions League final a few years ago that probably led them to changing the laws of handball when what's his face? Who was it? Was it Mane?
Kicked
the ball.
Yeah, Mane.
And kicked the ball against one of our players' hands. I can't remember who it was. It was down by his side, but because it hit his hand, it was a penalty, and the game never, we never really recovered from that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it, but yeah, if it was done against us, I'd be aggrieved. I mean, it was like what, half a foot away from him. I mean,
yeah, it just wouldn't be a penalty now. They've changed the law, and rightly so. But at the time, I suppose in the eyes of the letter of the law, it was a penalty. And after that final was just a dreary sort of game to watch. I don't. It wasn't great football, was it? From what I can remember, it was one of those games where I'm glad that you scored a second goal, because if we'd lost on that incident, it would have been pretty hard to swallow, But this is my penance in life. I've had such a great, enjoyable life, but I have to balance it with being a Spurs fan. I honestly think that sometimes it's like it's like the some sort of Greek mythological character that it has to push a globe up a hill or have his liver pecked out by an eagle on a daily basis. It's you just have to put up with it. It's never going to be any different, and that's just it's just the way it is.
Well, I mean, last time you were on, we talked about Kane and why he made the decision to move to Bayern. He could have stayed and probably beaten Shearer's record, but again, there's that horrible thing where he's getting on in age. Doesn't look like England's going to win. Anything. They get so close and then kind of fall at the last hurdle. He wants to win trophies, so you can't really blame him, for doing what he did. But I've always had like a soft spot for Spurs. And I think that does go back to, Ricky Villa, Ozzy Ardiles, watching them play football. But you always have like a good squad, and I thought Pochettino had you going in the right direction. And then all of a sudden, it just, whatever was happening behind the scenes with Levy and Poch, I think Poch had maybe asked him, hey, give us a bit more dough so I can get these couple more players in to, really nail down the squad. And it didn't happen. And then obviously, you had a couple of years where you've got Mourinho, you've got Conte, and it just didn't work. You could tell it just didn't work. You didn't have that free-flowing football.
Desperate. Yeah, it was some desperate decisions that thought Levy tried to buy a trophy, didn't he, with Mourinho? That didn't work, and they were just ill-timed and the wrong decisions. And I think that Levy has learned from those, but these days it's not easy to win a cup when you're playing in a competition with teams like Liverpool and City for the most part, and and Chelsea and Arsenal, who've been also seem to do very well in the cup competitions. They know how to win them, and they've got the financial backing that Spurs never really quite had. They were always the sort of poor cousin, weren't they? And less to prove that you can win. It was a total anomaly. Call it what you like. There were some fluky results. There were some, everything went their way. But you're only going to get that once that's only going to happen once in our lifetime. When it's over a period of a few years, if you don't win a trophy, which has as much to do with luck as it does judgment, and let's face it, when one of those teams that I have mentioned wins the cup, there's a certain amount of luck attached to it. When you don't win that and the luck hasn't gone your way, it's purely indicative of how much money is in the sport now, and how to keep up with the Joneses. You have to keep spending money. You have to keep buying the best players, and when someone has more money than you and can offer more money to the best players, you're not going to, you're not going to get the best players. You're going to get the second best players, and then you're stuck in, the same old loop. So I don't really blame anyone as such for us not winning a trophy. I just think that a combination of a little bit of not bad luck, but not enough good luck, and finishing where you're supposed to finish. If you look at the financials, Spurs have either finished a few seasons we've overperformed by maybe one or two places, and a few seasons we've underperformed by one or two places. But there's no great shock there. There's the whole trophy thing. It's just it's become a bit of a noose or an albatross round our neck that other people can, have a bit of a laugh about, and for us, a very frustrating, distraction sometimes, because most Spurs fans would tell you that those Pochettino years when we didn't win anything were great and super enjoyable and wouldn't change anything. And if we'd won something, that would have been nice, but we didn't, and it was still just as enjoyable, So, winning a trophy, does it mean that much? And is it that easy that people should mock a team for not winning one? No, that's my take on it.
The Liverpool, obviously Klopp is a world-class manager, and I think without him, we wouldn't have got where we were, and we haven't spent as much as a lot of other teams. So when we've won a trophy, it's meant more to me than like City win at least 2 trophies every single season, but they've also got now 130 charges against them. That's a whole different story. That it's not a level playing field anymore. You've got Newcastle, who have more money than City, but obviously with the new PSR rules, can't spend it. And I just think it's greed that's taken over the sport that we both love. And for a few years I was falling out of love with football, because it's obviously result based and it's money based. But I don't think anybody should make, as long as if you're a match going supporter, or you've invested time, like especially over here in the States, you get up very early in the morning to watch these 12:30 kickoff games. Any person that does that, hats off to him. And I always say that you might not win trophies, but as long as the football's decent and your team's having a go, then what's the issue? Of course, every team wants to win a trophy. You can't tell me there's not one Spurs fan going, I'm all right with that. You all win we all want to win trophies. Trophies kind of.
At this point, you do, just to get rid of that sort of, like I said, the albatross around your neck or whatever it is, but it's never something that I grew up thinking, oh, when are we going to win our next trophy? Because we have been successful in the past, and some of it during my lifetime, but it was never an expected thing. Maybe obviously a bit more so in the past, but these days, I mean, I'm like you. I look at it as a bit of fun with some mates watching the game. It's nice to go to the stadium once or twice a year to watch a game and to soak up the atmosphere and do those things. Walking down Seven Sisters Road and just having a few beers with your mates. But the back side of it, the money side of it, the transfer sagas and all that, I don't really have much time for that, anymore. I don't play fantasy football or any of that sort of stuff with, where you have to be on top of every week who's injured and all that sort of thing. I like watching the game. I'll watch any game I can that Spurs are involved in, either at home or with the mates down the pub sort of thing, and I'll have a beer with any of my other mates and talk and chat about their footy team. But I've never been an obsessive fanatic when it comes to these things.
Yeah, it's not like
I sometimes wish that maybe I did support a sort of I'm trying to think of a smaller local team, because obviously it would have been Brentford, but now they're in the Premier League as well. I've got a mate round here who supports Crawley, and obviously they went up into they won promotion into the league, I think, right? The second division or something, I think. And it was. I watched that game with him, and it was exciting. It was genuinely exciting. You could really feel, the fervour of the fans and all that. And I think that's sort of, it's been missing a little bit in the Premier League lately. The pressure and the expectation and
the price of tickets.
Yeah, it's £100 a day. It's a 65 quid ticket with transport and a couple of beers. It's a minimum £100 a day, and who can afford to do that every week?
Yeah, well, I think that's why a lot of people are following their local teams now. The lower leagues. It's a lot cheaper, but like the atmosphere, even like 3,000 capacity stadium. They're enjoying the football again. But yeah, I mean, I've always, I know you have a soft spot for Liverpool as well.
I do. I have family. I mean, half my family are from the red side of Liverpool, and so all my nephews and nieces are all massive Liverpool fans. So, when we have a family get together, and there's a game on, Champions League or something like that, I will be 100% be behind Liverpool, because I want to be with the family and enjoying the football. But believe me, when it's Spurs Liverpool, I have no love for Liverpool whatsoever. Liverpool man, Liverpool Chelsea, Liverpool man. Yeah, of course I'll be behind Liverpool, but I don't think I don't think if you're English and you've grown up supporting a team, you don't really have a second team. No. You can have a team that you have connections with, that you would happily see beat your arch nemesis or a European team. But as far as that's as far as it goes, I like your new glasses, by the way.
Huh?
I said I like your new glasses, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I got the sun thing as well on them.
Oh, reactor lights.
Yeah, so when I go outside, cool. Well, then you save on sunglasses as well, and then you don't lose them, which is good. But what's your like expectations for this season?
Let's wrap it up with my predictions and expectations. Well, my expectations and predictions have now gone slightly different directions after the first few games of the season. My expectations would have. I like to have low expectations in life, Daz. You know that. You can't be too disappointed then. My expectation would be about a 7th place finish from what I've seen. And my predictions are that I'm not sure if Big Ange will still be Spurs manager after Christmas. You know?
Wow.
Yeah, I think that I think that you could say again we've been unlucky in a couple of the first few games. We should have won. I heard a ridiculous stat that our first 2 away games we'd had 35 shots on goal and got 1 point from those 2 games, and that was the first time that had ever happened. But when it's consistently happening, there's a reason for that, and there is a reason for that, and that we don't have Harry Kane or someone who can win a game. You know, those sort of games, the person who's going to win them for us. And we've got Solanke, and we've got to give him a chance and got to give him time. And I've got a feeling he probably will come good at some point. But I think we're definitely a work in progress. And I don't know if there's enough time available for Big Ange to turn it around, because if you look at the end of last season, if you look at the second half of last season, let's say, and take the stats from the beginning of this season, it's not a rosy picture. And so let's see. I mean, we might go on a run. Yeah, we might win 5 games. So
still early doors, mate. But you know, I'm still thankful that you bought Solanke, because we got the sell-on clause for him.
Still.
Yeah. We Michael Edwards, who did that, like, worked his magic. Yeah, I can't believe how much we sold him to Bournemouth for, because he barely played for Liverpool. And you know, when we got the sell-on clause, and I think it was 10%. So we got a nice chunk of change. So thank you for that.
It's a risky purchase. You know, I want him to do well, because he seems like a good bloke and all that sort of stuff.
He was bagging him in for Bournemouth last season. He's 26 now, which is crazy to think he's that old. You know, he's not going to be. He's not going to be a big Harry Kane point, 2.0. I think with Harry, like, his awareness and his game intelligence is really, really good. Solanke, you know, again, he's still learning. So, but you've needed, you know, a big man up front. Richarlison isn't that person. Plus, he's got the most punchable face in the Premier League. Richarlison, I cannot stand him, and it's not just because he played for Everton either. He's just one of those players that just rubs me the wrong way. Stand him. Bless you. But yeah, you know,
let's have this conversation again in a year's time and see
if you have a new manager, how many new players you have, you know, where you are in the league. Well, I mean, I'll bring you back on when we play you in the league. So, you know, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, mate. You know, and it's always good that, you know, because I don't think we ever have really sat down and I you know, asked you these questions about your roots and influences, you know, and got more detail from you. You know, I know we've had many late nights.
Yeah. What do we talk about? We must find something to talk about.
Yeah.
Remember though.
Exactly. You know, but we you know, I'm happy to, you know, say that we're still mates after all these years, and you know, even though we don't see one another as often as I'd like, you know, when you do come to town, it's always a pleasure, and you know, it's always good to talk music and football with you, mate.
Cheers, mate. Yeah, well, here's to the next time we actually raise a glass together.
Yeah, well, you know, it's so bad. You know, when you haven't seen each other for a while, that they don't even remember who Uncle Petey is.
Oh no!
Even Sasha, I was like, remember Uncle Petey? She just looks straight through me, like, no idea. Who is he?
That's like you're like taunting me now.
Yeah.
Oh well, I have to put that right.
Yeah, well, where can obviously if you're interested in house music, you can go on, your regular like Beatport, but much better than Beatport is Bandcamp, because most of the time, most of the money will go to the artist. At Bandcamp Friday, where it's 100%, right, Pete?
Yeah, once every 2 months they do that.
Yeah, which is great, because you're the one making the music. Why should the record companies make all the dough? So yeah, please go check him out. It's Pete Bones.
Yeah, I think there's a Red Ant page on Bandcamp, and there's a Pete Bones page as well.
Yeah, and it's brilliant music. Take it from me, and he's got some great new edit, Splintered, Volume 2, Volume 3, right now.
Volume 3's out tomorrow.
3. But that's your last one, right? In that volume series.
Yeah. But I've got some new music. I mean, I'm trying to put something out every 6 weeks at the moment, so there's new music coming all the time.
Yeah, so please check Pete out. Please like and subscribe, put your notifications on, and we will see you next time.